Okay, hi everyone, welcome back to this video series on the Comptia Security Plus course, ARP Poisoning. The Address Resolution Protocol, ARP, resolves IP addresses to MAC addresses. Any resolutions that occur over a set amount of time are stored in the ARP table. The ARP table can be poisoned or spoofed. ARP poisoning is an attack that exploits Ethernet networks, and it may enable an attacker to sniff frames of information, modify that information, or stop it from getting to its intended destination. The spoofed frames of data contain a false source MAC address which deceives other devices on the network. The idea behind this is to associate the attacker's MAC address with an IP address of another device, such as a default gateway or router, so that any traffic that would normally go to the gateway would end up at the attacker's computer. The attacker could then perpetrate a man-in-the-middle attack or a denial of service attack in addition to MAC spoofing. Some of the defenses for ARP poisoning include VLAN segregation, VLAN separation, creating multiple virtual LANs in an effort to thwart the attack, DHCP snooping, and an open source program called ARPON, http arpon.sourceforge.net. Chapter summary. Just as cracks in a dam are vulnerabilities to anything standing in a nearby valley, open ports are vulnerabilities to computer networks. The teeming flood of network attacks is seemingly endless, and though new network attacks are constantly being devised, these threats have to be dealt with in a proactive manner. All metaphors aside, this means you are required to have a thorough understanding of the many networking protocols in use today and their corresponding port numbers. Knowledge of inbound port numbers is the most important because they correlate to the services that run on a server. These are the doorways that attackers use to access a system. Servers that run protocols such as HTTP, FTP, SMTP, and so on should be updated, hardened, and secured appropriately. Secure versions of these protocols should be implemented. Any non-essential protocols and services such as the deprecated telnet or, for instance, TFTP, should be stopped and disabled. This effectively closes the ports in question. Note all, you should memorize the ports mentioned in this chapter because you will be scanning for open ports such as these in upcoming chapters. If there is ever confusion about a port or protocol, remember to access the IANA website for more information. The whole point of reducing the attack surface of a system is so that malicious network attacks will have a more difficult time accessing the system. For example, let's say you have a server running Microsoft Internet Information Services, IIS, and have a website running on it that uses HTTP, but you unknowingly also have FTP running on that server using port 21. The server could be easy prey for attacks designed to infiltrate via port 21, but it doesn't have to be this way. Using secure ports, closing ports, disabling services, and of course using firewalls are vital defenses. In this day and age, there is a cornucopia of network attacks when observing your network and servers. Attacks such as denial of service, DOS, and distributed denial of service, DDoS, spoofing, hijacking replays, amplification, and poisoning should be at the top of your list, but the security administrator must wear multiple hats in addition to investigator. One of your roles is that of researching. You must study the latest attacks and CVEs for a system, watch for updates and bulletins, and visit online forums and discussion groups often. However, the role of watcher is probably one of the best descriptive terms for a security administrator. You must constantly scrutinize your servers and network equipment. This everlasting vigil is part of the job Those who are alert and observant shall prevail, and those who are not, well, they risk the danger of becoming enveloped by a flood of threats and that lurks just outside and sometimes inside the computer network. Network perimeter security. Allow me to agonize for a few moments, and I've said it before. As you read this book, you are building yourself an impenetrable castle of knowledge, culminating in hands-on familiarity and know how to pass the example. We can use the castle analogy for networks as well. Imagine a big stone castle with tall walls, as expanse of clear land around the castle, or perhaps a moat surrounding it with alligators of course, and one or more drawbridges. The tall walls are meant to keep the average person out, sort of like a firewall in a computer network. Not perfect but necessary. The open area around the castle makes it difficult for people to sneak up on your castle, and they would quickly be detected, just like malicious packets detected on your network intrusion detection system. Or better yet, if you had a moat, people trying to cross it would have a difficult time, would be easy targets for your bowmen, and would possibly be gobbled up by your pet alligators. This would represent a network intrusion prevention system which not only detects threats but also eliminates those threats to the network. The drawbridge or drawbridges could be seen as network ports open to the network. As drawbridges are part of the castle wall, so network ports are of the firewall. You, as the network security administrator, have the ability and the right to close these ports at any time. At the risk of taking this analogy even further, you might even decide to set traps for people, like a pool of quicksand that has an open netted bag of pyrite suspended above it, or maybe a false entity to the castle that after a long corridor is walled off on the inside, ultimately trapping the unwary. In a network environment, these would be known as honeypots, of course. Every once in a while, legitimate traffic needs to enter and exit your network too. To do this in a more secure fashion, you can set up proxy servers to act as go-betweens for the computers inside your network and the servers they talk to on the internet, kind of like a sentry in the tower of the castle that would relay on outsiders' messages to someone inside the castle. The network perimeter is less tangible in an actual network environment, thus the previous use of the surface metaphor. Network devices are commonly located in a single server room or data center, or perhaps located in a hybrid of in-house and cloud-based locations. Either way, they can be difficult to visualize. To better envision your network, one of the best tips I can give you is to map out your network on paper and create network documentations using programs such as Microsoft Visio by utilizing network mapping tools. Firewalls and network security. Nowadays, firewalls are everywhere. Businesses large and small use them, and many households have simpler versions of these protected devices as well. You need to be aware of several types of firewalls, and you definitely want to spend some time configuring hardware and software firewalls. There are many free software-based firewalls and firmware-based emulators you can download. A quick search on the internet will give you several options. The firewall is there to protect the entire network, but other tools are often implemented as well. For example, proxy servers that help protect users and computers by keeping them anonymous. Honeypots meant to attract hackers, crackers, and other types of attackers in a false computer or network, and data loss prevention, DLP devices to keep confidential data from leaving the network. But by far the most important element in your network will be the firewall, so let's begin with that. Firewalls. In Chapter 3, Computer Systems Security Part 2, we discuss personal firewalls. You remember the kind installed on an individual computer. Now let's broaden the scope of your knowledge with network-based firewalls. Network-based firewalls are primarily used to section off and protect one network from another. They are a primary line of defense and are extremely important in network security. There are several types of firewalls. Some run as software on server computers, and some as standalone dedicated appliances, and some work as just one function of many on a single device. They are commonly represented as a sort of brick wall between a LAN and the internet, as shown in figure 8.1. Just as a firewall in a physical building is there to slow the spread of a fire and contain it until the fire department arrives, a firewall in a computer network is there to keep fire at bay in the form of malicious attacks. Often a firewall or the firewall device resides on has NAT in operation. Figure 8.1. Note that the firewall has a local address of 172.29.250.200. This connects it to the LAN. It also has an internet address of 65.43.18.1, enabling connectivity for the entire LAN to the internet while hiding the LAN IP address. By default, the IP address 65.43.18.1 is completely shielded. This means that all inbound ports are effectively closed and will not enable incoming traffic unless a LAN computer initiates a session with another system on the internet. However, a good security administrator always checks this to make sure first by accessing the firewall's firmware or software application, as the case may be, and verifying that the firewall is on, and next by scanning the firewall with third-party applications such as Nmap, https nmap.org, or with a web-based port scanning utility as was shown in Chapter 7 Real World Scenario. If any ports are open or unshielded, they should be dealt with immediately. Then the firewall should be rescanned for vulnerabilities. Important point: firewalls should be used only as they were intended. The company firewall should not handle any other extraneous services, for example acting as a web server or SMTP server. By using a firewall as it was intended, its vulnerability is reduced. Generally, a firewall inspects traffic that passes through it and permits or denies the traffic based on rules set by an administrator. These rules are stored within access control lists, ACLs. In regards to firewalls, an ACL is a set of rules that apply to a list of network names, IP addresses and port numbers. These rules can be configured to control inbound and outbound traffic. This is a bit different than ACLs with respect to operating systems, which we cover in Chapter 11. Access control methods and models, but the same basic principles apply. Basically, one entity is granted or denied permission to another entity. If you decide that a specific type of traffic should be granted access to your network, you would explicitly allow that traffic as a rule within an ACL. If on the other hand your device that has a specific type of traffic should not be granted access, you would explicitly deny that traffic within an ACL. And finally, if a type of network traffic is not defined in the network rule set, it shall be stopped by default. This is the concept of implicit deny and is usually a default rule found in a firewall's ACL. It is often added automatically to the end of the firewall's rule set, ACLs, and is also known as block. All firewall rules should be specific. Here are an example of a firewall rule: deny TCP any port 53. This rule can be used to restrict DNS zone transfers as they run on top of TCP and use port 53, but other DNS traffic still function properly. The rule is specific. It gives the transport layer protocol to be filtered, and the exact port also states that it applies to any computer's IP address on the inbound and outbound side. Be careful with firewall rules and ACLs. They need to be written very cautiously so as not to filter fire traffic. So I'm going to leave it here today for this video. If you like listening, please consider like, sharing and subscribing. Thank you.